This new power strip from TP-Link costs as much as a couple of Wi-Fi smart plugs and gives you way more features. But is it just right for your smart home or way more than what you need? Either way, I think this is a cool product you need to keep on your radar. I'm Eric Welander. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, we talk all about Apple and smart home tech. So if those are things you're into, consider subscribing. And thanks to TP-Link for sending me this plug to check out with no strings attached. This video is not sponsored. So you might have heard about smart plugs, those little things that you can put over an outlet and it makes them smart. You might not be familiar with a less common category of smart power strips. These look like surge protectors, but have outlets that act like smart plugs. In the box, of course, you get the outlet plug itself, along with an optional post for mounting in the bottom of the outlet, which then holds it in place. And also, speaking of holding it in place, you get an optional screw, which you can use to connect to the wall plate for that outlet. And along with the setup guide, there's also a special Apple Home troubleshooting guide, which I find interesting. I didn't have any issues, so I didn't need to refer to this document. Installation's pretty straightforward. Once you decide if you need the post or not, you just plug it into the outlet and it's on. Then you scan the HomeKit code if you want to add it to your Apple Home and go through getting it on your Wi-Fi. Now, before we talk about the Apple Home integration, let's go through all the different features this plug has, because there's a lot. First, you get 3 smart outlets that function like smart plugs, and these are labeled on one side of the outlet as smart. And then there's also corresponding buttons which you can use on the outlet to turn those on or off. There's nothing really to label those buttons as on-off buttons, but it's pretty similar to a lot of what I've seen on other smart plugs and outlets. On the other side, there are 3 non-smart outlets which are labeled as always on. And then on the side of the plug, there are 2 USB-A ports and 1 USB-C port. The USB-C port's actually capable of charging up to 18 watts, which isn't super fast, but is better than the usual speeds. And all of these USB ports together are attached to a smart outlet as well. We'll talk more about the use of these USB ports in a minute, but you also get at the bottom of the plug a smart night light and a light level sensor in this device, which you can use in Apple Home to run any kind of automation. And as you might guess from a smart power strip kind of deal, it does work as a surge protector, but I can't find a Joule rating anywhere for how strong it is. Now, I mentioned earlier that all of the USB ports are actually acting as a smart plug, and that came in for me labeled as outlet 4. You can rename it to whatever makes sense for you, but I think there are a handful of cases where this might be handy. Maybe you have some kind of a lighting accessory like a light strip that can run off of USB power. Then you can make it smart. Or alternatively, maybe you have, let's say, a camera like a HomeKit Secure video camera that runs off of USB-A or USB-C. And then you could use this to only turn the camera on at night or when it gets dark at night. And that way you're getting the HomeKit video monitoring at night, even if you're home. Could be a nice benefit, but then the camera is completely off and not even connected to power during the day. And thanks to automated_house over on Threads, that's Jimmy Hawkins, for mentioning this whole idea of powering cameras via USB. Now, beyond the typical uses of smart plugs for something like a lamp or a fan, another thing that I find handy and I think fits well into sort of the smart power strip category is restarting devices. For example, I keep my printer plugged into one of the smart outlets, and then I can restart it automatically every night, which just keeps the printer being more reliable. And if someone in my family contacts me wherever I am about the printer's not working, I can go ahead and restart it with the smart plug by just disconnecting the power and rebooting it. Of course, I could also attach that to something like a Apple Home button that then could run a quick shortcut to do the same thing. So whether it's a printer or some other piece of electronics, keep that in mind that these kind of smart power strips could be a great place to add that functionality to restart a device. Now, the light on the bottom of this plug is a night light in all intents and purposes. It's not insanely bright, but it is going to give you plenty of light, particularly in a dark area. And that's where automation comes in handy with the light level sensor, because you could say when the sensor detects below a certain level of lux in the light around you, then you can turn on the night light. And then when it gets bright enough again, you could turn it off. And well, you can probably find 1,000 different other products that do this without connecting to your smart home. The benefit of having it in your smart home is you can also chain it together with other lighting you might want to have on when it gets too dark. Or like I mentioned earlier, maybe it's connected to a surveillance camera as well for that. Now, for me, I've put my power strip behind our piano where we used to have a surge protector, and it's nice to have it right on the wall as opposed to something that's sitting on the ground. And that's where I plug in my home pods, as well as, of course, the lamp for reading music on the piano. And then I have our family printer plugged into one of the smart outlets. I also have a charger there for my children's iPad. But as you're probably noticing with how I'm actually using this, I'm not taking advantage of a lot of the features. And that really gets me to the conclusion of, is this device something worth putting in your smart home? I think there are few people who will have a scenario where they can use all of the different features in all three smart outlets and the smart USB and the light sensor and the night light. But I view this instead of wasted opportunity as just a very versatile plug. As my life changes over the years, I move smart home tech from room to room and change around what it does. And I could see using a different set of the features in the future. And when I'm looking at this versus buying a couple of smart plugs, in some ways, a single smart plug is a little bit more versatile in just that it's so much smaller than this device. But this device brings so many other features with it. I think it could be a good tool to have in your smart home, even if you're not actually taking advantage of all of the features. Especially as I mentioned earlier, the little rod that actually helps you connect this to a wall outlet isn't necessary. So if you wanted to run an extension cord to power this or something else, you can certainly do that. And then it adds more places you could put it. So let me know in the comments below if you think this is more versatile than just a bunch of smart plugs. And I have another video here on the screen for my channel that YouTube thinks you'll be interested in. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.